When I feel pain, as soon as I can, I look at it as a sacred doorway. Once you start to experience where this world loosens its grip on your soul, you start to see it as an invitation, something much more important to go back inside.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang.
Baiba, thank you so much for being here today on the Touch of a Mustang podcast.
I'm super, super happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
To start with, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes. So, like you said, my name is Baiba, and I host also a podcast that's called Live in Technicolor. And I also teach somatic movements for more energy, more vitality. I specifically teach Qigong and Tai Chi that work on the tendons, on fascia, and flexibility and mobility of the body. And so everything that I do is emanating from this purpose of reigniting your own spark, reigniting energy, and bringing more joy and energy into your life.
Beautiful. Tell us more about how you got there, what that journey was like. You used to work in the corporate world, is that correct?
Yeah, so the journey probably originated on the other side of Atlantic Ocean when I was born in Soviet Union. And I came to United States after high school. So I had started university or college back in Eastern Europe, a small country called Latvia. And there was something in my own soul that was planted that was driving me to come to America. I probably saw it as a beacon of freedom, and somewhere it resonated with my own soul. And now that I look at it, I think a big part of my purpose is really finding and helping others, leading others to find that sovereignty and freedom within themselves. But so I came from Soviet Union, which was an occupation essentially by Soviet Russia. And then fast forward, blinders on, came to America and kind of carved a path to stay here. And as you mentioned, after graduating from college here, I tried different jobs and then eventually kind of put my ladder against the wall of recruiting in corporate America. And so I did that for about 15 years, climbing this proverbial ladder or linear model of the next level role, more responsibility, bigger team, more money. I was a good achiever, a good climber until, over the years, I have had this call. If you ever felt this feeling where on the outside, you feel like your life, like everything is validating, you're checking these external boxes, right? You have a really great child, you're a great mom, according to everybody else, you have a house, you have safety in the physical means of this, 3D reality, or what we are calling reality and seeing with our eyes. But something inside of me was just dying. There was kind of this spark, and I was also experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And literally, I can compare it to that spark within me, like dimming. And then it scared the shit out of me, after in my early 40s. It's just like kind of in your 20s and 30s, you can make yourself like to fit the model, to force yourself to
push through.
To like check all the external boxes, to do all the responsibilities that, this world tells you to do. But at some point of time, I just became so exhausted. I was having pains in my body. And like even my evenings or weekends, I just felt fatigued a lot. Like I was literally recovering and I didn't have energy for my own life. So it wasn't even that I was working like 60 hours a week. No, by no means. But like my energy was somewhere being drained. And so that's kind of fast forward where I am now leaned into going 180 degrees in all the other direction that I was so well programmed and trained. And so I turned into a fire. And also through that process, I realized that I love podcasting. I love interviewing people. And I also love kind of teaching the somatic movements and deepened into a life of my own making, essentially.
What was that like in the beginning? You said you kind of followed this feeling you have internally to come to the United States. How you were a young adult when this happened? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was 19. I didn't have any support. It was kind of like completely coming to not only Europe is a different system, in a way that it's organized, but also for the first 9 years, I was living under a completely different reality that many people have not seen, even different from
Yeah.
Western Europe. And then something inside of me was just like, that was really my soul driving me, because there was no logical explanation. My grandmothers could have never even conceptualized an idea, right, when living behind the Iron Curtain, that it would be even a possibility. So, yeah, it was definitely not a rational, logical.
What was that change like going from your home country to coming to the United States and doing it when you're young and, like you say, not necessarily a lot of support, but something you felt like you should do still?
Yeah, I mean, I was crazy, as you can call it. I mean, it was heart wide open, and it was literally following what was built in my own essence, in my own something that I came here to do. And it was a part of my journey because, I mean, it was just a journey of tremendous courage, and I wasn't really overthinking, over analyzing. It's funny, like yesterday, I went out for a dinner with a friend of mine, and I was talking to her and saying, okay, in my 18, 19 years old, I came here without a plan, without a savings account, without a 401k, account, essentially without this safety net, right? That this world tells us where we derive safety and stability and has us working so hard for. Now, I was telling her, isn't that so interesting that when we have the 401k plan, where we have some savings, like I feel more scared than I did when I had nothing. And I was just
Yeah.
going and following that voice, that call on my heart.
Yeah. It is interesting how a lot of those things we tend to get so focused on where we think we have safety, but then we start living in fear because we think, well, what if something happens? What if it doesn't go the way we're planning to go? And I think that can be a big reason why we make a lot of our decisions. Did you find that that came into your life as you began building up and having money to do things and having a home and having a job, that fear started to kind of direct how you made your decisions versus when you were younger?
Yeah, because like I had no plan A or plan B or plan C. I didn't know. It was literally putting your one foot in front of the other. And there was no overthinking, not that looping. And I definitely see how, and it's probably different inputs that go into it. But after like the later 30s, how there was much more that running that program than thinking and coming and putting a lot of energy into that safety money program. Yes. And thinking about the
Yeah.
tokens, like all the decisions now are being driven by primarily by the tokens.
Where do you feel like you developed, which I think a lot of us have that need to kind of be the good girl or to follow the check marks, be in the boxes? Is that something that developed from your childhood, or is that something that came more once you came to the United States? And how did that affect your choices moving forward before that changed for you?
Yeah, so I call it, for me, it was essentially betraying myself, where I started making decisions, behaving according to others, not of my own soul and my own guidance, starting from 5 years old, I would say. And that was now that I look back at it, it was definitely driven by safety, right? To the need to stay safe and survive. And I developed all these like high achieving mechanisms doing despite being tired, right? Forcing, being even tough. I was so tough on myself. And that, of course, has cascading effects because when you're driving yourself hard, you are driving others hard. and
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and I definitely had a narcissistic father, so that kind of came that survival need to kind of escape emotional backlash, emotional cruelty. And as a little kid, you just want to stay safe, you want to stay out of that tension, so a lot of those mechanisms were developed. And I don't know, of course, if I came here and at what point of time they were developed, but I do see, kind of looking back, that it was probably about like that age of 5 years old that I started betraying and more kind of focusing on the outside, pleasing the outside, and obviously also controlling, because you kind of feel like you have to control certain things on the outside to stay safe and to survive.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you say be trained, which I totally see that in a point, but also as children, that's the thing that we have to do to survive, to keep moving safely in the world. So it is interesting to think about that maybe there was no other way to do that at that time than to let go of those little pieces of yourself so that you could stay safe in your world, whether that was
Yeah.
belonging or, actual physical safety. How did you go from something that was developed when you were a very young child, like that was the way you learned to interact with the world and to stay safe in the world, to take care of yourself? How did you make that leap from following those check marks to going back to saying, okay, I know intuitively that there's something else that's going to be better for me and I'm going to start following that instead?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a journey of 4 decades pretty much.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't one leap. I know that we're so trained in this linear model to go from point A to B. Like, what was the one thing that made the difference? And at least my experience has not been that way. So I would say that I started being aware that I feel deeply unhappy inside, dissatisfied, the dissatisfaction was running, starting from my 20s. And that's where I probably started the seeking journey, the seeking in the different teachings, the seeking in different gurus, the seeking in different courses, the seeking in different books, you name it. I bought it, like the books, the courses, like the teachings, it was seeking very, very, there was something that was driving me that there must be a better experience. There must be something more. I mean, and I think that was a part of my own soul's, like the imprint, kind of the same thing as, when I came from Latvia to United States, that it wasn't a logical, like something that you get to and you decide. This was a deeply, like a spiritually driven path. And I would say I probably spent years looping, I worked with different teachers and whatnot. But really, I would say what made a huge difference, and I don't know, it probably also is a culmination, right? Sometimes we can also, we've learned like also this learning and awareness and then seeing something, seeing ourselves. It's like a process and it's almost like we have to adjust. It doesn't happen. At least it hasn't happened to me going from 0 to 180, but it did accelerate hugely where essentially I call it like I was able to break away, to blow up all the chains that were binding me, that were binding my own essence, that were binding my own spirit in the last year. Like I started to walk in a radically different direction, but it was my choice that I chose this like very devoted spirit path and walking into my own fire. Yeah.
Yeah. I find that to also be true. Sometimes we think it's going to be a big change, but a lot of times it's those gradual steps that lead us to a different destination down the line, a lot of different things along the way. to where we're able to come live into a life that feels more true to ourselves. And I don't know how you feel. For me, I'm still like, doubt it sometimes, like maybe I should go back this way and worry about these things and kind of ignore and tamp down those things that you feel internally and that kind of intrinsic pull. Have you found that at all?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's like, it's the same thing that you're never really at some sort of perfection, right? That also our mind is trying to force or arrive. Because I remember how many times I'm like, well, I've
Mm,
already experienced this. Why do I need to make the same lesson again? Like, why do I need to, like, have the same experience just with a different person? But that's where this kind of this masculine world, and by masculine, I don't mean men. We are being indoctrinated or sold this very linear approach. And that's what I mean by masculine, because both men and women have feminine and masculine energies. And I just like part of the exhaustion for me, and part of what we are seeing reflected on this earth and this planet is that this imbalance of exalting the masculine, so the strategy, the mind, the action, and force, right? The kind of all of those can be good, but we are kind of I was very imbalanced with the feminine. And I think that the exhaustion, like that I was feeling, the fatigue, like lack of energy, was just like a forcing function to just like, okay, if you're not gonna stop, you will get stopped, because
yeah.
you will not be able to keep it this way. And I also see it kind of how much of it I was doing with my son. So I have one son who is, I think I heard that you have 6 kids. So I don't know how, but I have just one, and he's like also a big part of my journey. And I also see how much I was trying to force him, how many moments have there been, and how much of a training ground it's been to pull back
Mm,
that forcing kind of the masculine energy, also that obviously the corporate America trains in you is take action, measure everything is growth, right? It's supposed to be growth, growth, growth. But the feminine and the nature, like the creek is not always flowing from point A to point B in the most direct way. And the same we feel like with our own journey. And I think we
mhm.
also compare our journey to others. And I also find myself, what you said, it's also like when we look around, we look at the Instagram, but I should be there, or this person is there.
Yeah. And so easy today to compare and wonder, like, am I doing something wrong? Should I be doing things differently?
Yeah. Yeah. So understanding also part of it is I still feel, sometimes like the questioning or the doubt. But when I do, I no longer look outward and I'm no longer rattled by it. Like I turn back into me, into my own soul, into my own essence.
Yeah. What are some ways that you do that? Like, if you find yourself drifting a little bit into being pulled back that way, and a lot of the stuff that we're surrounded by, the measuring, the
Mhm.
growing in the right way, trying to find the most direct route. What are some things that you do to kind of pull back away from that again and to go back into the things that you found to be helpful?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I've found to be helpful is to actually sit and feel, like to go, because like the mind is so smart, and it's also that we are so trained to bow to our mind. And the mind has so much knowledge, and the more knowledge it has, the better it feels. The more
Yeah.
important and right and righteous it feels.
Mhm.
So, a big part of my journey and what I do is actually connecting with my heart and feeling what is coming up. Like, it's more than, in my body, but part of it is feeling what's coming in my body. But, like, what is the experience of my being? And turning into that, instead of like I no longer like are seeking from the external teachings and kind of that I answers outside of me, but then as soon as I feel something bubbling up, turning inward and actually like getting, so the knowing yourself is one of the the most trait probably everybody knows, like that saying, know thyself.
Mhm.
but we do everything to not know ourselves. We
Yeah.
do everything to look outside of ourselves. So it
Yeah.
sounds very simple, but I find that for me, that practice has made the biggest difference, and I keep coming back to it every day.
Yeah. Do you have something specific that you do on a daily basis to kind of allow space for, to not get rid of some of the outside voices and to focus back in on some of those internal feelings and voices?
Yeah, so for me, walking definitely is one of those things. Like, I love being in nature. That's why I love how you talk about horses. And I think for many people, that is a strong connection, a strong grounding point, because a horse is not like scrolling social media, right? The horse is not all discombobulated, agitated. I mean, obviously, they can be agitated too, but not in a way that we worked ourselves, in the levels of anxiety and everything. And so me, nature is definitely one of the direct gateways to bring it down, to center. Yeah. Another can be like having a cup of coffee, right, in the morning, but not bringing your phone. Is essentially, it's like
Yeah.
how many times, and I can even do it when I drive my car, like, it's like how often can you turn back from the outside, right, into you and below just a chatter of that mind. And like sometimes when you write it down, then you're like, oh my God, this insanity has no endpoint. And you start like noticing like all the things, right, that are running through the mind. And like even now, right, there can be a lot of fear, right, a lot of different thought forms, perspectives that are being presented that can really easily grab onto your energy. And when you start like all the anxiety and fear that can bubble up or be stirred up, like if you like literally, if I start writing it down, for example, they will reset the money system or, like this, what will happen like with the prices and everything. And then you're like, start thinking, where do these thought forms get you going? Like, okay, now I need to like buy this and I don't know like what will happen. And I need to, maybe do all of these things ahead of time. But then you realize that as you start writing them down, there's literally no end to what you need to do. And it's impossible. And then I was like, oh my God, this is the old programming, old conditioning, that the good girl conditioning or even a good corporate employee conditioning, that you think ahead, you plan ahead, right? You are so smart
Hmm.
and so clever.
Yeah. And it does become so consuming because you're right. It's just never ending. There's always another thing to think ahead for and plan for and take you out of the moment that you're in and the reality that you're living in.
Like even being in the presence of a horse. And before we started recording, my niece, little niece, I was telling you about, like she's in Latvia and she just like loves horses. And nobody in our family really is drawn to horses like that. And she just had a birthday with the horses. So I can see, I also have, been around horses and I can see how, like, it's finding those anchors for yourself, right? Because there's no one right or wrong recipe or one way, but I can
Mm,
totally see how that can be a huge grounding ceremony, like way, gateway, opening.
yeah. They definitely do. They get you out of they get you out of your head into the present moment in a
Yeah.
pretty incredible way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. They're pretty awesome. You need to find a chance to get around some horses. I think you'll enjoy it. You talked some about having anxiety and struggling with anxiety. What are some things that you found were effective in moving out of that state of, that constant.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you what it was for me. So for me, it was, I think the anxieties, the dissatisfactions, even all these like dark nights of the soul, when I was talking about turning into the fire of you. So that's highly spiritual, like it's a devotional path to activating your own essence. Depending on your belief system, it can also be called like connecting with the Holy Spirit that is animating you, or the Christed essence It's really the words do not matter, but once you are there, you know it. It's an unmistakable experience of feeling. You can also say the love of your father. It's just like this complete overtaking state of being where you know that you are so loved. And I get chills in my body as I'm saying this, and where I knew that nothing in this world, no person, no experience, no highlight, no travel high, nothing will come close to comparing that you know that you are complete. So I would say for me, that is what took away once I leaned in and once I really devoted to that spiritual activation, that is when the anxiety went away.
How did
And I
you get to that point? How did you find that for yourself?
So all those clues, like all that pull on my heart, like that dissatisfaction, the pain, like the anxiety, the like dread, like many days when I was waking up, like all that struggle, the way I see it right now, looking back, hindsight is 20. The way I
Right.
see it, really your soul, it's kind of that more spiritual path that you're being
Uh-huh.
invited to wake up to see beyond these like this physical world that we are so enamored to because that's what we see with our eyes. And of course, the outside of us, we are being like over and over conditioned that that's a reality, right? That we need to measure everything. And that's a part of this masculine and linear model. But I think that these pains, it's like it's this divine spark inside of you. It's like, okay, are you going to wake up? Are you going to listen to me? Are you going to honor me? Are you going to turn towards me? Right. And for years, I was like, no, 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 I have a to do list, right? Like I felt
Yeah.
it and I did. And I actually felt like I was doing things because I was reading and I was taking the courses and I was taking whatever, doing when I thought,
Doing.
I was doing and doing even through the seeking, like
Yeah.
the this is like the meditation, whatever, Christianity, Kabbalah, like even Joe Dispenza, all these Eckhart Tolle, you name it, because there was that pain driving me. And I think that that pain is really that divine spark saying, are you going to listen? Are you going to steamroll over me? Again, one more day, because you think everything else is so much more important.
Yeah.
Did I
I
answer your
think
question? I'm like, what was exactly the question?
I mean, I don't know, but it was good. But yeah, I think we all kind of suffer from that where we put off what is really important for the things that seem important in the moment or right in front of our face, particularly, money and the pursuit of it and the pursuit of, progress and status, those things. And so that we really do kind of forget like there's another side of us. There's a soul inside of us. And what are we doing to nurture that? So I love that. And you said, was it an instant thing where your anxiety was gone, or was it more of a journey like we talked about before?
So I would say that it's like a spiral. So even like even though like for me the anxiety no longer is that constant companion, the fear is no longer like it was for like many, many years, but it's still like you will still have emotions come up. Fear still can come up, like different also. It depends also. So to answer your question, no, it's not just one moment. I would say that it's just kind of when you calibrate to a certain point and then through your day-to-day experience that you literally have this sensation, you have that state of being knowing, it's a gnosis, that you are animated by that Christed essence, by the Holy Spirit. Like you know it. Like you don't need anybody else to tell you, and you don't need to prove that. Once that happens, it still happens that you have these different things and different feelings and experiences. And even last weekend, I felt like there was a lot of heaviness that I moved through. I just continue using my own tools because what I do is I actually now mentor people who are devoted to their own path of expressing and living a life in harmony with their own soul, right? Not just like oh, I want to manifest this or like a car, a house or whatever, but like your soul is so unique. your soul does not care. I'm sorry, anything about those things. And it's not just like we're being sold this like McDonald's version of manifestation, leaving out like a deeply spiritual other path, or that it is literally turning into the underworld also of your own like emotions, of your heart, of your pains. And kind of like when I was going through it, and what helped me was really feeling there was a lot of like nurturing love that was missing from my childhood. And I had to feel waves and waves. And sometimes it just felt like it was swallowing me. Like there were times where I felt like I wasn't strong enough. And I think that's why it took so long, because we are so good at running away from the pain, right? We will make the coffee cup, right? We need to take care of so many things, right? We kind of push through, but we also push through kind of the sadness, the pains, all these kind of quote unquote negative feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never found it to be just a one time thing. Like I had to keep it's kind of like coming back to the altar, of your soul, that divine spark, and then kind of also that ignites like the clears like more of that connection also with the bigger source, benevolent God. I call it living benevolent God, whatever it is for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said a couple of things I found really interesting. I think I found the same thing where you really have to come back to it or you'll go off track again. It is a continual process to kind of recalibrate, to stay in connection with your inner state of being, with your creator, however people see it. That, yeah, it's something that you have to integrate regularly in your life, or so quickly you'll be pulled away. You get on your phone and you're in a whole different world, pulled away. It's very easy in our world today. I also love what you said about pain and how that's the beacon to tell us something's wrong. You need to you need to fix something. That's a principle I found to be very true in my life and that of my family as well, it's a sign to us that something's not right when we feel, and by pain, it's not physical pain usually, although it could certainly manifest as some physical pain, but a lot of that emotional and mental turmoil that we put ourselves through, I think, is a point. When we're feeling sad, depressed, dark, down on ourselves, all those things are a beacon to call us back and be like, hey, you're forgetting something.
Yeah, I love how you said it. And the pain, I see it as a doorway. It's an invitation. Like, are you gonna keep running away still really, with these mechanisms, right? Like shopping, eating, scrolling, and no judgment, but
Yeah.
I see it happening
Yeah,
real.
I do it too. Yeah. I mean, I'm there. I'm guilty.
And this world has really, really good mechanisms to take the attention, turn it on it, right? On everything on the
Mm-hmm.
outside, including great teachings,
Mm-hmm.
including leaders and, what everything, right? That can pull us outside of ourselves, pull our energy, our attention away from our own soul. But now when I feel pain, as soon as I can, I look at it as a sacred doorway. Okay, this is an invitation. And to me, like you said, it's like a daily. I've trained myself like now, because I think once you start to experience, right, where this world loosens its grip on your soul, you start to see it as an invitation, as something like, oh no, oh no, that it's much more important to go back inside. Like, okay, what else is coming up? Let's honor it. Let's hold it. Let's nurture it, right? All these things. Be gentle with yourself, like all the things that I didn't get in childhood. It's like, how can I now give it to myself? And then, of course, when you can give it to yourself, you can give it to your children, you can give it to humanity, to others.
Yeah, I love that. Talk to us more about that, about how you brought more of the feminine into your life, and tell us what exactly you see for that. We've seen the masculine's kind of growth measurement, progress, those types of things. What are some of the feminine aspects to life that you see, and also that you realized, hey, I need some of this also? Not to say that we don't sometimes need those measurements and to focus on growth and stuff, but maybe to rebalance it, to recalibrate to where it's more equal, evening one another out.
Yeah, so the feminine is receptivity, like being instead of taking so much action. Femininity is also wisdom. Right. So that gnosis, like that is more like the heart and wisdom of your essence, not just a logical. You know how sometimes you might be like thinking of something and you're trying so hard to figure it out, right? You can make all the lists and you're like going in circles, asking all your friends, or your partner or, whoever you ask, and then if you like disconnect from it, like then like the next day or whatever, in some moment in the shower or with a horse or in nature, right? The answer, the knowing just comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that definitely
that
happens.
is wisdom. That is like a knowing
Mm,
that is feminine. Femininity is also fire. Like, like Mama Bear, like she will protect her
yeah.
kids. Femininity is also not like we're being sold a bunch of garbage to about like this. It's only like there is that softness, that receptivity, the gentleness, not rushing into action, actually like resting, taking care of yourself, nurturing, right? You nurture, like I love nurturing my son, I love taking care and making my friends happy, cooking something, baking something, buying, just, the how happy you are when your kid is happy, right? Because you
Yeah.
give something that delights them. It's also very, very fiery, protective, and fierce. I mean, like we go through so much pain and labor. I mean, so it's a tremendous internal strength. I think
Mm,
horses probably also exhibit like a lot of that, uh, of that as well. So, and I think that like a balance, like so, what also the initially what happened to me is that I saw how much I was running in the masculine, and that was what had exhausted me. It's just taking action, but once I so for me, initially it was like a lot of rest. So it's almost like the pendulum had to swing to compensate in the other way, like to catch a breath, to regenerate. Because like another thing about activating your own essence, and hearing your own soul, you have to have strength. You have to have enough energy within your body. Because if you're constantly stressed, if you're constantly, right, you're doing, and you feel tired and fatigued, there's not enough energy really to pierce through, to go, to turn into that fire, to feel those crappy emotions and feelings, and to make that activation. At least that was my experience.
yeah, I agree, especially with the brushing emotions or covering them up with other things. We talked about a lot of the things that are really easy to cover them up to where they just never are able to move through us. And also that idea of rest. That's something that we don't talk a lot about in our culture, our society, or if it is rest, it's like go and watch a movie or something, which is
It's
not
still an action.
necessarily rest, or leisure. But yeah, if we really look at rest as really just allowing ourselves to settle and to like really just have space to fill the soul and to fill our needs, whether that's, sitting and watching birds, or I've definitely also felt the way nature can kind of restore you, where it gives you peace from all the world. You don't have all those stimulation coming in, and you can really rest your mind and your soul and your spirit a little bit, so that it does have that room for you to gain that wisdom, which I found the same thing where you're out in nature, or for me with horses, and all of a sudden you get like, oh, there's the answer to my problems that I've been, circling around and studying and trying to write out. And here's the answer. That's definitely something I experience for sure as well.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some things that you encourage other people to do to find their feminine side, to find their soul, to be able to start hearing that voice again that a lot of us have like dampened and ignored and maybe even pretended wasn't there, or we didn't really feel it? What are some things you recommend to people that you work with, that you mentor? What are some things you do to guide them to lean into finding their purpose? Especially, I think it was kind of the same for me around 40. A lot of my kids started growing up, and that had been where I put a lot of time and energy. And there were definitely times where it's like, who am I now? Like, if all my kids, they're all going to leave eventually. And like, who does that leave me? So I think we all face those points where we kind of need to reassess, like, what is my purpose in life? What is my soul trying to tell me and guide me towards?
One kind of fun and playful process you can introduce is taking a look at, well, first of all, just take stock of how much of your day is spent doing truly what you want and how much of your day is spent on responsibilities. But if you could outsource, if you could choose not to do them, you wouldn't really care less to put your life force behind, like truly and honestly. And you don't have to announce it. And then from that, because the answer will also depend on each person and where they're at. So this is a very individual process. And that's why I work with people one on one. So, like, let's say if somebody's exhausted and tired and stressed and anxious all the time and they're in like a lot of reactivity, then the first is a physical, like, you will have to recharge. You will have to start with like just the basics, right? Like sleeping, going outside
Yeah.
for walks, like maybe moving your body, maybe it's just sitting and doing nothing, right? Um, Literally like regenerating on the physical level. But let's say, you have decent amount of energy, you don't feel like exhausted or fatigued, then can you start introducing an hour? I would say probably at least an hour a day, and just notice how your mind is like, oh, I don't have enough time. Like, this is a program, this is a conditioning that's running very loud throughout the psyche of the Western world. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's also beyond, but I lived, I can say,
Yeah.
my mom is still running that program. I still look at myself and like, "Ah, okay, these are the echoes of the good old program, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like the mind will protest it and it seems so real. And how can you start building in a practice of every day carving out, like, let's say, an hour of doing what you feel like? So, spontaneity.
Mm.
Because, like, once you've been conditioned to be responsible and be a good achiever, a good, all these things, highly functioning or surviving in this society, at least I was doing most of the things. I wasn't doing anything that I felt like, or very little. And that is like a beautiful way of starting to actually create space to pay attention, to hear, to kind of also even that knowing bubble up those answers. But literally, like, I don't mean like sitting on the phone, the phone,
Yeah. Not
but
the phone. Yeah.
like starting to plug in to creating that space of playfulness and hearing and listening, and then just following, like starting to hear and follow a little bit of an instinct of what comes through.
Yeah. I love that. And I found that, like, I knew those things were important, but it was hard for me to do them without feeling guilty that I should be doing something else, going back to that programming where you should always be doing something that has results. And a lot of times those things maybe don't really have results. It's just the time that is the result and the nourishment that you're getting that's the result, which isn't as easily to measure as if you're like, I just cleaned the kitchen or I just went to work for 3 hours and earned money for my family, those type of things. So I found it can be really difficult to do that without feeling guilty, like it's not something you should be doing. So I love the idea that, like, no, this is also something that, not to ruin it, but is a should. It's something that's important that should be given priority to.
And only in those, like, that will most likely be prepared. That this is why we also partly run away from it, that will come out. These voices talking about that you should be cleaning, you should like water the flowers, you should, the neurosis, but that will start,
Yeah.
like you will start, it's a part of the process, a part of this journey. If you truly want to create a life that is not only like checking the outside boxes, but actually the inside boxes, it will be a part of that journey. And it's not going to be all rosy and feel good. And the guilt and like that productivity program, like I still notice it. I still notice, like it even how uncomfortable, how we want to force a timeline. We've done so much and then I already sat or prayed or meditated or walked so much. So I should be here. So all of that will come up, but it's interesting that you can start to see also like a little bit of the insanity and all of that and start to like when you look at a bird, like the other day I was driving from teaching a class and I was at a red light and like I saw it was either an eagle or a hawk, the birds that are flying high above the tree line. And the bird was not flying like, again, in a straight line. The bird was like elevating, then descending. It was flying back and
Yeah.
forth. And where do we get this idea that now we will sit down or we need to do every time or every day something that's productive and linear? I mean, like, it's insane. Like, and I'm just saying it I see the insanity in my own ways.
Yeah. And I think that that bird is a beautiful analogy for life, that it's not a direct line. Like we ebb and flow and what's good in one moment is not good in the next. And we need to shift direction and kind of be okay with going with the way life is taking us and accepting it instead of trying so much to fight against it also, to feel like, no, I should be over here and that's not where you are. And instead being, no, this is where I am and I'm going to enjoy the view and what's going on and the struggle even sometimes. So I like that analogy a lot and just that visual of the bird flying and how it can relate to our lives, something we can tune into nature that we can kind of take into our life that doesn't always have to be a straight line, probably won't be a straight line as much as we would like it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also not need like you honor your own truth, like your own knowing that comes from you. You're so, conditioned, and sometimes also we want to make like one truth an absolute truth, but that like not to be so rigid to and attached to these beliefs and some kind of frameworks. You might get one knowing and then you will get a different perspective, just
Yeah.
like the bird, like when you descend and you're within the trees, right? That's why you don't see as clearly sometimes as you're up, if you've climbed a mountain, right? And, or driven up, right? And when you get to a certain elevation, and that's kind of going back to when we talked about creating that space, when, we talked about different practices or gateways, right? To that connection with yourself. That connection allows you to be that bird, right? Where you can elevate above the noise, and kind of widen your own perspective and aperture. Because when you're in the trees, all you can see is like sometimes, like here in North Carolina, you can't even walk through the forest because it's like so dense.
Hmm.
Where I come from Northeastern Europe, like you could go, like the trees were, but there was a lot of space to walk in the woods. Here it's all like bushes and like it's all overgrown, like a jungle. So,
Yeah.
and then, of course, when you're like lower, then you kind of when you're in the density of the day to day, it's easy to.
Mm. Yeah, and there's so much you can't see. Yeah, and I think that's also a really great point that we like to. I definitely was taught to see black and white, right and wrong, very clear and stark. And I think the truth is that what is right in one situation for one person may not be the same, often isn't the same for another person in another situation. I think that's something we talk about a lot with horses. There's a lot of rules that are kind of set in stone that are really being questioned now. And it's the same idea that, one person may want to live this certain way with horses and another person may live totally different, and both can be okay and good. There's not that black and white, right or wrong that sometimes we become so dedicated to that we're torturing ourselves with because it doesn't feel aligned, but it's what we were taught or it's the boxes that we were told we should check. And we can kind of feel like it's not right for us, even though that's what we've been told our whole life, that this is the right pathway.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the hardest because it seems like everybody else is, we don't even have to be told. Like it seems like that's what everybody else is doing or modeling for us,
Yeah.
right? And I would say the path to go inward, like this spiritual path of like hearing and honoring a divine spark within you is a path of that many people don't walk. So that is also why it can be a hard one and, won't be necessarily reinforced
Hmm.
by people around you, or you won't see that much. And that's why it's also can be a very difficult path, like to feel the pains, to feel like, I mean, this is a tough world. I mean, like even many people who thought that they, were provided for, they had the housing, they had the food, like even the scars that like the lack of nurturing love and attunement leaves like deep, deep wounds. So yeah, it's like have the gentleness, the love, and just a lot of grace for yourself
Yeah.
wherever.
That is beautiful because I don't think any of us leave this life unscathed, unwounded, whatever form those might take on, which can be so vast and various. But yeah, just the idea that it's okay to heal and nurture and to take care of yourself. I think we tend to really undervalue like that self-nurturing that you've talked a lot about. That yeah, like it's okay and good and necessary even to nurture yourself, to show that same love and care that you would for your child, or the effort and energy you're putting into your job or your friendships, whatever it may be where you're really committed. Like you need to have equal amounts turned inward to yourself.
Yeah, because the action that you will take, you probably have seen like the action that I've taken from when I'm stressed, reactive, impatient, tired is very different than when I'm coherent, when I'm coming from that alignment of my heart, my soul, and only then taking action. Yeah, it will be very, very different when you love
Yeah,
yourself, when you give that grace to yourself.
very different reactions. How has couple things I still want to talk about. You work a lot with movement now, right? With the work that you do. Talk a little bit about that and how we can find healing or even attunement and alignment there through movement.
Yeah, so our body, right, there's these things that also are not very widely taught, is a tendons, like how important it is to stretch and move your joints. So the movement practice, the somatic movement practice that I teach is gentle. It's moving all the joints. It's also called in Qigong oiling the joints. So it's so important to move small joints to little joints to maintain mobility throughout, old age, because even we are being sold this idea that somehow old age means that you are in a hospital or you are immobile, but that's not true.
Doesn't need to be.
It doesn't need to be, and I've seen, of course, different examples in what sedentary lifestyle looks like because I also teach at senior living homes. And so I teach the kind of movement where you're building strength through flexibility through it's a moving meditation. So it's turning 180 to the programming of push yourself harder, no pain, no gain. No, pain means stop. So and it's moving your fascia, rehydrating your fascia because our mechanism, the body, the plasma, the electric, like they're much more sophisticated processes going on than just some sort of like a chemical or, reductionist kind of approach, let's just build strong muscles. Fascia wraps around, that's connective tissue that wraps around through all your organs, through your tissues, through your joints. How much do you hear taught about fascia, right? No,
Not
not
much.
much. So like I really so my own fatigue and pains in my body, I could not do like these hardcore exercises. So for me it was a part of my own healing journey and regaining strength through more fluid, gentle movements.
And have you found that while it has a physical impact, that it also has a mental, emotional impact?
Yeah, I think that I feel so much better, so much different, so much like I can connect more to that sense of aliveness and joy if I'm also moving. And for me,
Yeah.
after 40, I was getting back pains. Like I could not, like walking, I've always been like dedicated to walking. Like to me, that was like that centering. I needed it, like to come down from all the discombobulation of the day to day. So
Yeah.
I always like walked for like a good hour probably every day. But then after 40, somehow it was no longer enough. Like I could like lean over, clean a bathtub, and like then have back pain.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this is not good, you know? So, yeah, it definitely, I think it's a part of kind of that taking care of yourself to have that, like what we talked about, the foundational, the sleep, like also, I think nourishing food that you have to have a baseline taking care of your body to be able to, kind of elevate, to be able to activate kind of also that spiritual path.
Yeah, it's incredible how connected it all is. We like to, in American society especially, we like to put in little boxes like this is physical, go to the doctor for this is mental, go to the therapist for this or whatnot. But most often, there's definitely an interplay between the two that the better we
Mhm.
feel physically, the better we feel mentally. The better we feel mentally, the more likely we are to take care of our bodies. So there really is an interconnection there.
Yeah, and also as when I was studying qigong and tai chi, so these are like based on traditional Chinese medicine, aspects and teachings that I came across, I guess, a concept, a teaching that made a lot of sense to me, that the way we are designed is that we need to use like a lot of the imbalances, right? What you said here, we label them as mental, emotional, but a lot of that imbalance comes from us actually not using our body and our mind in a balanced proportion that it was designed to be used. So we are highly over in the brain, right? Using the mind. So many people work in corporate, right? Sit behind the computer. It's all mind, mind, mind. But then the body is not being worked. But we were meant to move our bodies. So a lot of this imbalance I found to be true, that you can, and it's been my own experience. Once I balanced it out, like I also, it contributed hugely to feeling better.
Yeah. Tell us if someone feels like they have a purpose that's kind of calling to them, or they feel like there's something deeper in their life, or they're feeling unfulfilled. What kind of advice or direction would you give someone who is feeling that discontent in their life and wanting to lean into their purpose, but maybe doesn't know exactly what that is or how to even do that?
Yeah, beautiful. That is an invitation. Look, many people are in that place. Like so many people don't know what their purpose is. And it's a beautiful invitation to start. You can start by devoting the 15, 20, 30 minutes to listening, because your purpose is encoded within your essence. So it can be the most frustrating thing, because it's like, oh, if it was, I would know it, right? This is what the mind will say, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's an invitation to start connecting with yourself more deeply, to listen. I just would say honor it. It's a beautiful invitation of that divine spark. So just start honoring it a little more and listening a little more.
Yeah. Do you have advice for people who maybe struggle because they feel like they can't follow their purpose because they need to take care of their physical needs, have a house, pay rent, all those things, have gas?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably pretty layered, and it's just like one of the things, right? So part of a lot of that narrative is not true, right? But the mind will tell you that it is. And there's a big battle happening within you. And you can see like the like I saw the crazy making happening in my own head. It's like, and this is when I wrote it down. I'm like, oh my God, like this is like a battle of like, and this is all happening
Yeah.
inside of me, like you don't have time, or you're sitting down, you should be doing all the things, but now, so
Mhm.
like literally like beating you up, right? And that's like
Yeah.
self inflicted, right? Or it seems it's just like it's exhausting. And sometimes it can be that pain that you said, that it's a beautiful invitation, if you can see it that way, of again, okay, turning back inward.
Yeah. How has it changed your life moving from, being climbing the corporate ladder to now leaning into what you really feel called to do with your soul and honoring those voices more?
I would say, I mean, you can't even, words are not good enough to describe the shift, that it's a base level. when you, at least I feel, when I connect with it, right? There's still moments, right? It's not like this again. We have this like idea now it's 100% perfect or all the time,
Right. We haven't made it. Still not figured out.
This world puts claims on you for sure. And I think before the question you asked before, it's kind of when we have a lot of like, okay, maybe I know I should be doing something, but there's a lot of voices that are telling me, the legitimate, valid reasons why I can't, right? Just like
Hmm.
all these external chains, right, that have placed on your energy is like, okay, but when you're 80 years old, will you look back and say and feel what? Like, because the years, I mean, you probably know, like, with every decade, it's just like in your 20s and 30s, you're like, I have all the time in the world, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can still build my dream life, right? But then the time seems like quicker and quicker. And then you're like 40 plus and you're like, huh, well, before you know it, you'll be 80 in the same
Yeah.
place. And do you want to look back? I think one of the things that's given me so much courage, and it's not like a linear process. I also have felt defeated. I have felt like so afraid,
Mm,
all the yuck, right? And there have been times when I've stalled, but like I always like got back up and I'm like, no, because I do not want to look back and think, what if?
yeah.
What if I had tried actually to do whatever is your idea? I mean, I've had the craziest ideas to start a painting business, like I started a podcast. I mean, I've done a lot of beta testing and um it's like, but even when you like, there's a huge satisfaction and fulfillment, even when you execute in the smallest of ways, like even if your idea is to have a horse, even if it is to go away and be around horses, it's just like taking those steps towards what is coming from your heart and soul. So I guess, just like that question, like, that regret was enough or can be enough of sometimes a driving force to like not give up and keep going.
Yeah. And I think a really good point that you made there as well is that just because you're doing what feels more aligned with your soul doesn't mean it's easy all of a sudden. But it's just an easy path forward. Still comes with a lot of doubt and struggle. I have found, have you found the same also, that it can be hard to keep going sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I have had many moments where like I was running away from my own pain and doing this internal process, and where I had all these, also experiences of fear, and sometimes like I felt like I can't get out of bed, like I can't face the day. And then what I can offer you as, I guess, a reason to keep leaning into kind of the devotional path of spiritual journey for yourself is that when you get to, how you hear in the books, like, all completeness, wholeness, you have to be whole to meet the person or whatever, but nobody, like, but that wholeness and completeness can sound like a cognitive concept, right? All these practices and all these invitations that life gives you that you can give to yourself, there comes a certain point, and it goes back to the question that you asked also, was that you, in your state of being, start to feel that wholeness, that's unmistakable, unshakable. So even though when this world will keep its bleep bleep, whatever, it's not an easy world to live in and to thrive in. But once you come home to yourself, there comes a point where you feel more euphoria, where you feel more joy, where you feel this enthusiasm, and your eyes are open to a different reality, like where the vividness and the brightness and the centeredness and the harmony, like you become that beacon, like, and that is an unshakable state of being where you are emanating coherence. So yes, you can sometimes, and sometimes in the beginning, when you kind of cross over or get to a certain point, there is wobble, but then there's less and less. Like, it's kind of like a spiral, but then you no longer are spiraling around the same circle. You're like kind of spiraling, right? And this life still gives you what it gives you, unfortunately, but you feel steady. You have become a lighthouse. And that's when you become that tuning fork, also where you can become that example for others. And it's even more, it's deeper than an example. You become a possibility for others to keep going, because I think that's the biggest part of my own purpose, is igniting and kind of keep flaming that spark, because I know how hard this world is, how harsh things, what happens, and how many things can happen to really take the wind out of your sails. And yes, we do have to survive and all of those things. And, like really bad and mean things happen in this world. So there's
Yeah.
definitely not like a absolute light in this world all time. But when you activate your own light to kind of, the way I see it, I never went to really church, or it wasn't like a religious kind of like a traditional sense of, a person who was raised that way. Soviet Union, about like the religion wasn't even allowed. So my parents, were never, it wasn't a practice, right?
Right.
Or like, again, words are not good enough. But through my own journey and my own truth, is this is what I see that Jesus actually came here to teach, is how you activate the Holy Spirit within you. And this is where kind of that invitation that the kingdom of heaven is within you. But will you remember? Will you be brave enough to turn inward?
Yeah. I do think that's so important for people to have that voice that is kind of saying there is a different way to do it. You don't have to follow this path that is less resistant to follow the box, follow the check boxes, do the typical path, that there are other ways to live and other tools and strategies that you can use. I think also, as you said, life can be really difficult. It is rough sometimes. There's some really hard things that we all will have to face at some point. How beautiful, though, that despite that, and even because of that difficulty, that's part of what contributes to our strength and leaning in to find that inner way of living and to reignite with our soul.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, can you tell everybody where they can find you if they want to listen to the podcast or take advantage of your services?
Yes, come play with me. Live in Technicolor is a podcast name. It's on Apple and Spotify apps. And I'm also on Instagram, same name, Live in Technicolor, with an underscore at the end. So come play with me in whatever form or fashion works for you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved our conversation. I think you have a lot of wisdom to offer because of the experiences you've been through. I think it's a place that a lot of people are going to face and hit that struggle. It's very common. I think we both experienced it around that midlife mark where you have to do some reanalysis of life and where that's going to go for you. But I think your voice out there is just wonderful. I'm definitely going to tune into the podcast and listen to it. I'm always looking for new good ones. So I'm really excited that we were able to connect and to be able to do this. And I think it's beautiful that you keep sharing your voice and your experience and the things that people can do to really make their life alive and vibrant and beautiful and everything that their soul is calling them to.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to leave everybody with a reminder that you are so loved and you are more powerful than you can ever imagine. So keep going.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal. In my darkest moments, I felt entirely alone with nowhere to turn. If this is you, I want you to know The Touch of a Mustang has resources to help you, both free and paid. From our guided journal on emotional regulation to one-on-one coaching and mentorship, you are not alone. We are here to walk beside you. Visit thetouchofamustang.org to learn more.